There are seemingly two versions of the DreamWorks movie Megamind. Before the final film was made, there is the original version written in 2003. This version of Megamind, originally titled Mastermind, was meant to be a live-action film, and through reading the script, you see that this version of the movie was much more crude than what we're used to. When the idea was revisited around 2006 and 2007, the live-action concept was dropped. The movie was now an animated film, and through the conceptual artwork and storyboards, we got our second version of the film. While this version was closer to the final movie, it still shared elements with the original script. For example, Roxanne did have some kind of romantic relationship with Metroman in the script, something that did not really make it into the final film.
Metroman and I were never a couple.
But that earlier romance did give her a deeper resentment towards Megamind for seemingly killing him. In the original script, Titan and Metroman are actually weak to copper, something that becomes a joke in the final movie.
Copper drains my powers.
Your weakness is copper?
And in one alternate version of the movie, Roxanne seemingly gains Metroman's powers and uses them to fight Titan. Borrowing from classic comic and Bond villains, Megamind, originally named Ubermind and Mastermind, in the early scripts was meant to encompass many villain archetypes, especially the genius inventor who always comes back to cause chaos. Early concepts of Megamind actually had him modeled after Galactus from Marvel Comics. Megamind in these concepts also seemed to wield powerful energy that he could shoot from his hands, and I would say that he looks much more sinister in these early artworks, appearing far more like a genuine villain than he does in the final movie. Besides some alterations to his design, they weren't all that significant, and really, Megamind doesn't really look that different from his final look. Also, it's important to know that Megamind's character never really changed much across the various scripts. He's always portrayed as a suave know-it-all, and out of every character in the movie, he arguably went through the least amount of change. It's when we start talking about Metroman that the differences between the various versions becomes much clearer.
I love you, Metroman. And I love you, random citizen.
Metroman in the early scripts was originally named Uberman, and you can see this name in the early costumes, as several pieces of concept art show a giant U on his chest. Uberman was meant to be a character who was loved by everyone, but perhaps was not as great as people thought. Uberman, or Metroman, was not written to be a bad person. In an alternate storyboard for Megamind, we see Uberman, or Metroman, going through his daily heroics. However, there is something strange. Even though he helps with small tasks like opening a jar for an elderly woman and saves lives every day, the citizens don't seem to care anymore. There's no gratitude, no excitement. People simply expect him to save them every single time. As a result, Metroman feels that people no longer appreciate him. Despite dedicating his life to helping others, people have begun to feel entitled to his existence. He's become a pure symbol that the city has accepted as just another part of daily life. Combine this with the revelation that he no longer finds fulfillment in being a hero, and you can see why he fakes his death. The original Metroman does not abandon the people of Metro City to Titan at the very end. In fact, he eventually returns to being a hero, realizing that it's his purpose and destiny. Metroman in the final film, however, refuses to return. He wants to live as a musician, and even though he won't come back, he assures Megamind that good and evil always find balance. So while the original script has Metroman return to his responsibility, the final film has him permanently step away from heroism, trusting Megamind to rise to the challenge. Even the endings for the two versions of the character are very different. In the final film, Metroman appears to return and scare Titan off, but Titan quickly realizes that Metroman is actually Megamind in disguise. This plays out almost the same in the early storyboards, except this time, Titan actually fights the disguised Metroman. In the original script, however, when Uberman returns to save Megamind, we assume he's about to fight Titan, but Uberman is immediately shot by Titan's laser and is reduced to ash, leaving only a skeleton behind. This forces Megamind to defeat Titan using a copper gauntlet. So, the original script kills off Uberman in the climax to solidify Mastermind's heroic transition. The final film instead keeps Metroman alive, but retired, forcing Megamind to become a hero entirely on his own. In the original script, Hal is much skinnier and scrawny, and he also wears glasses. This version of Hal is far more vile. He worked at a bowling alley but was fired for constantly being late, harassing female customers, and showing up drunk. He even steals money from a blind child while working in a school for blind children. In the film, while escaping a collapsing building, Hal pushes a mother and child aside to save himself. However, through pushing them, he saved them from falling debris, and thus he's labeled as a hero, which he does not deny. Elements of this darker Hal appear in the storyboards as well, such as this scene where he aggressively flirts with every female co-worker despite their visible discomfort. This version focuses more heavily on his negative traits compared to the final movie, where he's simply an awkward cameraman with only occasional creepy moments.
I did hire a wedding photographer. That's just in case we were like something crazy happened and we wanted a picture of it, like maybe we should have this for like ever, like a memory.
How Hal gets his powers is also different. In the original script, Megamind deliberately gives Hal Metroman's powers using something called Uber Essence, the supposed power source of Metroman's abilities. Megamind gives Hal the powers because he mistakenly believes that Hal is a good person after several misunderstandings. In the final film, there is no Uber Essence. Metroman's DNA is extracted and placed into an infuser gun. Hal only becomes Titan by accident. Since Hal in the original script was never a good person, he spends no time trying to be a hero. He finds out almost immediately that being a villain is much more fun and more rewarding. Interestingly, Hal's original design almost made it into the final film. Through animation tests, we can see both his skinny original look and his Titan form being tested. His original appearance even shows up briefly in the final movie on a magazine cover. Minion was not always an alien fish in a robot suit. According to early storyboard animations, Minion was originally a human who worked alongside Megamind in some kind of partnership, though we don't know much about their relationship beyond that. Surprisingly, Megamind was not the only villain in the world of the film. According to early storyboards and concept art, there were several other villains who never made it into the final movie. The Doom Syndicate was a group of villains in Metro City, likely serving as one of Metroman's many rogues gallery. In the storyboards, they come together after Metroman's death. Their purpose is to commit crimes in the city, while Megamind puts his plans together, at one point to train Titan during his early days. The Doom Syndicate consists of Psychedelic, who controls Purple Smoke, Destruction Worker, a man with super strength and construction tools, and Hot Flash, who controls fire. Originally, the Doom Syndicate had even more members, like Lady Doppler, who controls weather, the Puzzler, and Jive Turkey, but those characters never made it into the final roster. In one version of the story, Titan tries to team up with the Doom Syndicate to destroy and rule Metro City, though it's unclear how Megamind ends up defeating them. The group was eventually cut from the movie as they cluttered the story of the film, but they later reappeared in other Megamind media, including video game tie-ins and spin-offs such as Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate.